All right, how's it going today? I've had many requests over the last year to do more Kingdom Death Monster painting videos, and with that in mind, I'm going to paint this Manhunter. I really like this figure, and it's probably partially because I'm really into the early American colonial period, which is what he reminds me of. He sort of looks like a zombie pilgrim. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to get started. And to get started, I am going to do his flesh, or at least start his flesh. And to start his flesh, I'm going to be using Watercolors Flesh 5, which is a flesh color that I actually do not use that often because, as you can see, it's a little odd. And it took me a long time to figure out like what I might want to use this for. And so in this case, it's going to be my base color for the flesh tone. And I'm going to airbrush this, but obviously that is not a requirement. But I do enjoy using the airbrush when I can so that I can get a nice smooth finish. Let's see if I can make this happen. This won't come out. So as you can see, for this purpose, this is kind of an interesting flesh color because it's almost gray. It's almost a gray color, and since I'm seeing, you know, somebody that is scarred and perhaps dead as having a unique flesh tone. So I think a kind of more gray, dead flesh is not a bad thing. So we're going to let that dry a second, and we'll come right back to it. All right, so in order to even make this a little weirder, I'm going to start by adding some shadows with, this is Watercolors Olive 5 with a very liberal dose of their acrylic thinner. And when I say liberal, I mean it's probably 1 part paint to about 4 parts of the thinner. And you can actually see it on my glove here. See how thin that is? I'm just going to be brushing this onto the details, which is a lot actually. He's got a lot there. I suppose I could just wash him completely with it. You know what? I'm going to do that. All right, now I'm going to take some Watercolors Purple 5, and about as thin as I was using it, using the Olive 5, I'm going to add some color directly into the shadows this time. And then we're going to let that dry. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I'll bring some of the original base color, Flesh 5, back into the highlights. And I'm going to do a lot of this off camera because I really need to be able to get in and hit the details, which is a lot harder to do on camera. This is going to be very thin, like the last two steps. Yes, my thumb is my palette. And I may end up doing this step a couple of times to make sure that I'm bringing out as much brightness as I'm going to get in this color. All right, I was right. Not only did that take 2 attempts, it really took more like 3. And the other thing to keep in mind is that because there's so much detail, like in his neck and on his arms with all these weird veins or scars or whatever they're supposed to be, you kind of have to do some overbrushing, which is where you have, it's almost like dry brushing. You have almost a dry brush with some of your paint on, and you just kind of go over it with the edge so that it picks up on the details. Because you don't want to lose those colors that are in the recesses. So had to do a fair amount of that. But now I've taken a mix of Flesh 5 for more colors and Flesh 2 for more colors and made a light mix that looks about like this right here. This is, you can kind of see the original Flesh color there and then the mix there. It's pretty light, but it's also very thin. And I'm going to use this as a highlight. And we'll see how that goes. And again, a lot of this is going to be done off camera because it's almost impossible to do it without screwing up on camera. So you can see how thin that is. There we go. I just wanted to show you the eyes. Eyes are something I can barely do in the best of circumstances, and certainly not while I'm trying to position the Mini so that the camera can also see what I'm doing. Normally I would paint the irises, but as I was doing this, I felt like just leaving the whites gave him a nice supernatural look that I thought was kind of badass for this guy. So I'm just going to leave him as is. I had also went back and added just a little bit more of that purple 5 in essentially his eye sockets around the eyes. Added a little bit more of that before I did the eyes. So, and the eyes themselves are painted in Flesh 2. I have a tendency to use kind of whatever I have handy to do the whites of the eyes because it doesn't make too much of a difference. I generally don't use white because white is usually just too bright. But the Flesh 2 works out really good. So now I'm going to base coat some stuff, and you don't really need to see that, but I think I'm going to base coat the hat and the coat in Warcolors Cool Gray 4. So I'll do that, and then I will come back and we'll talk about where we're going from here. All right, so I went ahead and did a bunch of base coating, and let's just go over the list real quick. The wood in the gallows here is Warm Gray 2. The pants, the overpants, just briefly, I always found the pants to be interesting. It's like he's getting ready to go fishing because his pants cover his boots and everything, which is really weird. But anyway, those are Warm Gray 3. No, Warm Gray 4. Sorry. Warm Gray 4. Warm Gray 4 is actually a lot lighter than Cool Gray 4, which is on the hat and the coat, as I mentioned earlier. And I actually really like the Warcolors grays because you get a full range of both cool and warm, which means that you can do a lot of sort of desaturated color palettes that don't end up looking too samey. So it's nice. What else? Oh, so all of the leather so far has been Citadel Mornfring Brown, which is really one of my favorite red-brown colors. The Warcolors line does have a red-brown, but as it's not as dense a formulation as the base, Citadel base colors, it doesn't get as much use. So now, with that in mind, with that all done, I'm going to go ahead and work on the coat and hat. And to start with, I'm just going to do a highlight of Cool Gray 3. And it's going to be, I'd say 50-50 thin down with the thinner. Which, by the way, I only just started using for the past week or two. And I like it a lot, although I can't really tell you if I like it better than my previous thinner, which was Liquitex Airbrush Medium. It seems to act similarly. One benefit is that it definitely doesn't add any gloss to the finish, which the Airbrush Medium definitely does. So the top of the hat here is going to get a lot of this because it is, if we think about this in terms of the halo of light theory, which I generally do, a lot of the light is hitting straight down on top of that brim. So top of the hat, outside of the brim, it's going to need to get hit a little bit more here. And then, highlight areas. But again, since this is just our first highlight, we're going to use it fairly liberally. By the way, if the camera is a little bouncy, I have to apologize. Working in the indoor shop, I've got bouncy wooden floors. And so the camera is not as stable as it is inside the outside shop. Okay, now I'm going to do a wash of just black over the hat and coat, and that is going to be using just black, Watercolors black, using the Watercolors thinner at about 6:1, I think, and it's kind of experimental because I am using the thinner and not the airbrush medium that I would normally use in this case, and so I don't know exactly how this is going to turn out. Got my fingers crossed. So the experiment seemed to work pretty well. The medium that I normally use, the Liquitex airbrush medium, would have concentrated the black more in the recesses, and I ended up with a little bit of a dirtier feel to the coat and hat overall. But I don't dislike that, as he is supposed to be ragged looking, so I guess successful. But I am going to go ahead and maybe darken up some of these recesses a bit with just more of that wash applied directly. And I know it's pretty thin when it's not pooled up. So I know that if I just brush it in like this, it's going to be very transparent layers, and so I can do it just a little at a time until I get the results that I want. And overall, actually, I think this looks pretty good. And what I'm going to do is then go back with the Cool Gray 4. 4? Or should I do the 3? No, I'll do the 4. Cool Gray 4, and again, very thin. And clean it up a little. I mean, I don't want it to look like the paint has pooled. So we're going to smooth this out and get some highlight back in there. It's pretty thin. So the point here is to bring some of the highlight back out, kind of diffuse some of the that wash that built up in areas where I didn't necessarily want it. But this is so thin, it's really just going to smooth out the effect as opposed to covering it over completely, which means that I am going to still be left with a little bit of that ragged, dirty feeling. And I'm okay with that. And then a little later, I'll add a little bit more highlighting with the Cool Gray 3. And maybe even 2. We'll see. All right, now for the pants, I'm going to go straight for a little Citadel Agrax Earthshade because I want these to go more brown than gray. And I'm going to go ahead and put it over all of the leather as well. So as you can see on the pants, the Agrax Earthshade really worked well on there. I mean, again, I want this guy to be dirty and ragged, and that combination of the warm gray and Agrax Earthshade really gives a nice, it not only shades that very nicely, but it also gives a nice dirty effect that I really love. I also went back and added some more of the Agrax Earthshade, as I'm going to do right now, onto the pouches, and then I highlighted them with various layers of Citadel XV88, which is kind of a, I guess that's kind of a raw umbery color. Kind of a yellow-brown. I use that a lot with the Mornfang as a highlight. Kind of cuts through the red a little bit. And so I'll be doing that on other bits of the leather. Actually, I did do it on this here. And you probably noticed that I put the Agrax Earthshade on the wood on his gallows. And then I went back over that with some of my remaining blackwash that I had left over from earlier. And I added some Agrax Earthshade to his hat band, which I haven't kind of figured out yet how I want to finish. I do want to differentiate it somewhat from the hat, and that was sort of the first step in doing so, but I haven't figured out what's the next step. I think it's going to get a little bit lighter, a little bit more the warm gray. You know, he does remind me of a pilgrim, but I don't want him to look like a cartoon pilgrim, so it's not like I'm going to make that white or anything. The gun, this area got a lot of the Agrax Earthshade to really darken that down, and I'm probably just going to leave that as is because all these other details are going to get metallics, so the difference will be stark. But for now, I'm going to work on these ropes, and for no particular reason, just because that just feels like where I need to be right now. And for that, I'm going to be using the XV88 again, but this time as a base coat instead of a highlight. There aren't going to be any real bright colors on this guy. I do think of him as more undead. So the colors that he's going to get are going to reflect that. I think I'm going to put some color on those skulls as well, as long as we're working in this area of the figure. So I'll be back. Okay, the skulls are Citadel Screaming Skull, by the way. And I'm going to go back to the Agrax Earthshade and just put it on both the skulls and the rope. Probably could have done the rope, or at least started the rope before, or at the same time that I was doing the gallows here. All right. And while we wait for that to dry, I'm going to use some red 5 on his scabbard. All right, I'll be back when that's dry. So I've created a mix of XV88 and Warcolor's Warm Gray 2 for a highlight on the rope. And I'm going to try to apply that with an overbrush, but this mix is really thin and it makes it want to seep into the recesses, which is exactly what I don't want. So I'm having to be really careful with how I do this. All right, now I've blocked in all of the metallics. And that's the buckles, the knee pads, his gun, whatever the hell this thing is. With lead belcher, Citadel lead belcher. And then I'm just going to treat all of these with either Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade, or possibly both. I forgot to do anything with the sword, so I'll have to come back to that. I did lighten up the hat band a little bit earlier with Warm Gray 4. Again, to differentiate it from the hat. And I've also started with his stakes with a little Warm Gray 3, I think, or maybe it was Cool Gray 4. But anyway, the tips of the stakes I'm going to paint with a little Warm Gray 2. And then all of those, when that dries, all of that's going to get a little Agrax Earthshade. Yeah, I really have no idea what this thing is. I feel like it's either for panning for gold, or it's a cook pot, or a canteen. I don't know. No idea. Alright, well, now I think I better figure out what to do with that. So I've been doing a lot of little bits and pieces here and there. Just like a little cleanup. Did some edge highlighting on the hat with Warm Gray 3. And same thing on the coat. I also quickly did the sword. I lightened the red 5 with Warm Gray 2 in various amounts to get that shade in there. The gold is, it's called Metallic Choco. It's Watercolors Metallic Choco. I really like it because it seems to represent brass very well, like polished brass. And so I use that a lot. And I've done a little bit on the little handle here. It still needs a bit of highlighting. And, you know, I'll be touching that here and there as I get around to it. A lot of these little details sort of happen organically. So one of the things I did was blocked in his little severed hand down there, and that is with Dead Flesh, Vallejo Game Color Dead Flesh. And then I'm just going to create a really thin wash of, this is Watercolors Transparent Purple, which is a very, very reddish color. We'll brush that in there. Get rid of some of this excess. Let's see if we can't dry that out a little bit. I added some of the transparent lavender, Watercolors Transparent Lavender. to get things a little bit darker. Take the hair dryer to that. And there it is. And frankly, I think for the most part, we are done. I might go back in and just touch little bits here and there, but really for the sake of this video, I believe we're going to call him done. So I hope you enjoyed it. I haven't done a lot of these sort of front to back painting videos recently, so it's kind of fun to be able to get back to doing that. If you liked the video, be sure to click like on the video, and if you want to be sure to see more of my videos in the future, then you might want to hit subscribe. Also, I do get some funding via Patreon from my subscribers, and if you are not a subscriber and want to be one, well, there's going to be a link that you can follow in the description. And that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.